Okay, first up is Michael Lee. I think this came together really well. It's obviously you spent a lot of time, you know, getting the audio right and stuff. I think the aged film effect that works out really good, and it kind of is a consistent style. It ties everything together, and it's got music and sound and all working together nicely. I think you've done very nice. I don't know that I really have anything to change on this. Yeah, this worked out very nicely. Good work. Next up is Kendra. All right. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. Liking the tail. I think uh, the film reel rolling in works nicely, and it looks like it's convincingly rolling too, which is you know can be tricky to make sure it's moving in the right amount compared to how much it's rotating. So good job on that. Um, I think another, I like the shake of the tail here, but I think another sort of shake of the tail for I don't know, to kind of signal in the letters forming and to kind of draw your attention to where the letters are might have been interesting. I think the blurring to clear is an okay choice. Be interesting to try some other kind of movement. I think these are interesting shots, and definitely, the images are, recall obvious blacksmithing, so it makes you think of the old west. I'm just not sure somehow that font with that background, it doesn't. I don't know. I'm struggling with that going together, and also I think you're, having this kind of yellowish thing up against kind of orange and warm colors is tricky. So yeah, you might even just straight white text might have been good. Maybe a different font. I think this is. I mean, you definitely are combining a lot of things. So as far as using techniques, it's good. But you have text in the background, and then you're seeing text through text, and I think that's. Well, I think using the letters as a mask to see through to something else is can be a cool effect. I think that it's just, I guess you start to think, oh, am I reading the wanted sign? And then suddenly these other letters form, and it's a little busy, if you know what I mean. It's almost hard to make out the letters. And then just as you're sort of making this out, you have this kind of fire dancing behind it. It's distracting. So I feel like it makes it so that it's just sort of hard to read. And I'm not saying I couldn't read it, just that it's just a bit busy. So I think that one approach to deal with this would be maybe something besides a wanted poster in the background, and maybe something that isn't so high contrast, or maybe it like blurs out to a more even color before the fire comes in. And so by that point, you're just looking at pretty much solid color text, or at least text that has more subtle differentiations in color. Whereas here, this S is kind of very dark and kind of almost fading into the background. So just a little busy, but the technique's very good. But I think the end design, I might try to make some changes. But overall, good work. Oh, I was also going to say for this, I would just say have the kind of the whatever color that is, that whitish, background or beige or whatever you want to call it. I would have it go all the way to the edge of the frame rather than having a box within the box. Okay, this is Kobe. Okay. So I think on the Fedora phones, I think the hat flying is good. It's a real clear icon. The movement's good, and it's good that you put motion blur on there. Um, Font's okay. Somehow I feel like I'd want to try something different. Maybe not with quite such like of a script feel. Maybe something more solid looking, thicker. But it's okay. It just I might play with something different. Um, and generally, like drop shadows on text is kind of in design world somewhat fallen out of favor. I think if you do it, you want to keep it really subtle and kind of just blur it a lot, so it just helps make the white pop. But it's almost like get it to where it's so blurred you don't even realize there's a drop shadow. But like a hard drop shadow like that, I think is not you know it's just I don't think it's really considered good design these days. I think that the background is a little bit frozen. Yeah, again, same with the drop shadow thing here. I think it's interesting that you use the film reel to kind of wipe across the screen, wipe the text across the screen. But I just, yeah, the animation of the film reel is a little funny. You might try the easy ease. I think you select the keyframes in After Effects and just hit F9, and that might it has this feeling of it's like bouncing off the top and bottom rather than um, kind of smoothly moving through the frame. Like I can see where it might want to bounce off the bottom, but it kind of feels like it's hitting the top of its bounce, and it's sort of bouncing off that top position, if you know what I mean. It's like the change of direction is too hard, and that's where I think the easy ease thing can be good. Let me see if I can demonstrate that. Layer, new, solid. Just gonna do 100 by 100 and red, I guess. Okay. This is just to have something to move in the frame. And let's start here and P and Shift R to get both position and rotation. And I'll go forward, I don't know, a little bit. Or actually, let's go for, let's say, 5 seconds and maybe go to here and maybe, I don't know, 2 full rotations. I'm going to pull this to the end here, hit 0 on my numeric keypad. And now let's do some of the up and down movements. So let's see how that looks. I don't know why it's not playing back for me. It's weird. Just changing the workspace. Well, it should hit play. I don't know why it's not hitting play. It's a little frustrating because normally if you hit 0 on the numeric keypad, it plays it. Yeah, that should work. It's being funny. let me. So I just closed and reopened it. Let's see what Easy Ease does. I'm just sort of curious. I mean, it's not that linear to begin with. I might. It is a little bit. So let's just see. I'll do these ones in the middle. I'll just do, instead of F9, I'll do right mouse click, keyframe assistant, Easy Ease, and let's see if that looks any different. That looks worse. I think because it's doing both the X and the Y, and I think you just want the Y to be like ease in, ease out. We can separate out this X and the Y by doing right mouse clicking, separate dimensions, and then let's see what happens if we just do, let's make the, actually let's put them all back to linear. Where is that? I think you can just like alt click on them or something. Oh, control click. Okay. And then let's take these and, whoops, just the Y. And so you should notice that looks a little smoother. The other thing you could do is I could just do it on the top bounces. So on that I want it smooth there, and here maybe I want to actually, I do want it to feel more like a bounce. So maybe every other one, you can even see right there what it's doing to the shape of the curve, so that it feels like a little bit more like a bounce. You see that? When it hits the bottom, but then the top is smooth because I did only Easy Ease at the top of the Y position. Anyway, back to this. The other thing I was going to say is I thought that you could do something more with the background. Maybe, I don't know, have the sunlight or shadows changing. I mean, I understand that you're just starting with a still image, and so you'd have to kind of paint out a lot of stuff to do those kinds of things. But some kind of effect where there's more movement or change in the background. And again, tend to stay away from drop shadows like that. Okay. Okay, this is Cam. Down by accident, so let's watch that again from the start with the volume. Okay, so yeah, a lot of good images going on here. First of all, the video of the Northern Lights makes all the difference. And I thought this, it's funny, I'm not usually a fan of a script font, but somehow I kind of like this one. The only thing I would say is it cuts out, just seems like it's very abrupt the way it cuts out. I think there's a couple things happening. One is it seems to fade before the background, which isn't necessarily wrong, but then it doesn't finish fading, and then it suddenly cuts to black, and then the next thing fades up. I might instead do like a cross dissolve where like this fades and you go into the next thing, or a more gradual dip to black, but it's that sudden abrupt black. And also it just felt like Northern Lights Studios wasn't on there quite long enough, so I think just get it in there a little earlier. And you don't need this slow of a fade up at the beginning. You come up a little faster, got the Northern Lights Studios in there a little sooner, so you have more time to keep it, for people to read it, and not just such abrupt cut to black. And then the other thing you'll notice is you've got, starting with this black, we're at 5 seconds, 6, 7, 8. That's 3 full seconds of just fading up, really. It's too long. Usually it's like half a second to fade up. And then again, the presents just cuts out very abruptly, and suddenly we cut to black again and fade up. So I would either cross dissolve or fade down and fade up, but not just the abrupt cuts to black. And again, that's there for a moment and then it disappears. So hold it there. Give us a chance to read it. And again, same here. So I think in all the cases of text, you want to just hold them on the screen longer. And maybe in some cases that means bringing them earlier. In some cases it means, having it end later. This is Mark Keith. Okay, so you've got a lot of different techniques going on here. Whoops, I meant to just mute that. So I think that's okay. I think that you have the camera moving, you have both text moving separately, and then at right there, so the under the tree part stops. Yeah, I guess those two stop on the same frame, and then it stops moving, and then it fades out. And I think what would feel a little slicker maybe is, I don't know, to have the movement go all the way to the end and have it fade out. Or maybe just don't stop moving the background and have it fade out while the background's moving. What I don't think you want to do is have the text suddenly drop out like that during the fade down, though. I think the text should fade down with the image. And again, I mentioned this in another one. Drop shadows like this have generally fallen out of favor in the design world. So if you feel like you need a drop shadow to have the text pop out better, try to blur it a lot, almost to the extent that you can't even tell it's a drop shadow. And I think that flying in text is sort of, it doesn't feel like justified. It doesn't feel like there's a reason for how that kind of fits into the theme or the background or the look you're going for. And then this, I like that you're using the technique of the kind of character outlines as a mask, but it's just a little weird to have, human bodies as the silhouettes, and what we're seeing through them is more bodies, like the bodies on the ground, and then someone walking by. I think I think if you had, for example, a town in the background, or a sky, or a desert, or those kinds of things, I feel like that would work better. But seeing bodies on the ground through bodies, it's a bit odd. So yeah, I think you've got some good elements in here, but I think you could improve on it from where you are. This is Princeton. All right. So yeah, I think you've got some kind of good sort of cute design elements here, but I guess somehow I felt like the sort of interaction between the sun and the moon didn't quite pay off. Like I feel like sort of just felt like something more was supposed to happen, or you know what I mean, or I missed something. It's like, why is he laughing? I mean, I guess because the idea is that he's drawn that on the face, but sort of, I mean, I guess maybe if you saw the pen drawing it on the face and then he laughed, I think it would have come across a little clearer. Not sure I like the frame, the big red frame in there, but it does make the text pop out the bottom, so it's got that going for it. I thought the holes in the smoke worked really well. you could consider trying to do something with the text to make it look more believably part of the sign, like maybe try to make it look like it's burnt onto the sign or painted onto the sign rather than this very kind of blocky, kind of graphic-y text slapped on top. Maybe even just, simple thing of even a little transparency on it so you see some of the texture through it. Or try one of the blending techniques, like a multiply or that kind of thing. Um, and again, yeah, not a fan of drop shadow, so I think you could just get rid of the drop shadow in this case because the text is fine, doing fine separating from the background. You don't really need a drop shadow, so I would probably get rid of that. But yeah, overall, good. This is Jeffer. Let's watch this again with audio. Sorry about that. So, yeah, I think again, nice logo. One thing I had suggested on the last one was maybe you could have the highlights sort of move through the logo as if the light is kind of shifting and it kind of helps show the shape of it and makes this feel a little bit more dynamic and alive and moving because right now it's very static. And I guess this is supposed to be moving down into sort of the position of the gun, and it's kind of not working for me. I might just do a simpler transition for that. And I think if you can get the gun up higher so it's completely in the frame, maybe you even want to, take the word draw and shift it up so that there's more room for the gun and the bullet. It's a nice illustration of a gun. And so maybe you want to see it better. But yeah, overall, the good things is it's a good logo, and good illustration. I think it could just, yeah, I think I'm not sort of buying that logo turning into the gun or whatever. And then I think, yeah, just a few adjustments on that end part can improve it to make sure we see the whole gun and not crop it off in the bottom half of the frame. This is Vestara. This is really good. I think it's got a lot of things going for it. I think the choice of music is good, and the timing of the music works well. I think the concept of the blink, I might have liked it better if it wasn't just the blink. You've got, it looks, I can't really see there, but it's straight lines going up and down rather than it feeling like the eyes closing. I mean, it's going so fast you barely notice, and in that case, maybe don't don't blink, because you already got the kind of light bulb and the pupil idea, which I think is kind of cool as well, and good choice of text and color and all that. I think is nice, and I like the moving like whips in fast and then slows down. You got a nice high res photo, well cut out. And then the bullet thing in one shot. Yeah, I think it's good all around. Good choice of fonts, good timing, good images, good movement. Yeah, nice work. This one's Mercedes. Okay. Yeah, I think that effect there is interesting. I think maybe what I might say instead is to kind of you sort of have this very slow fade in where it's just barely faded in here, and then it kind of fades back down, and then it fades up again. I would just have it fade up at the beginning. And I think it's interesting, mostly interesting the other way, where you start out with the scrambled lines and then you see it form, and then I would just kind of hold it, Sierra Studios, and then a quick, thing at the end where it just splits up and then fades to black. Will look good. Yeah, that if you'll notice that text is a little bit, it's not anti-aliased along the edges, so I'm not sure why that happened here, but make sure you're using a fully installed font and that it doesn't do that. I think maybe that's sort of an abrupt cut. I might just do a cross dissolve there. And again, this feels really abrupt when you have this and you just suddenly cut to black. I would say fade down to black. And I think you've got one too many things happening with the bang bang effects there. I would kind of pick one effect and then bring it in and hold it still to give us time to read it. Okay, this is Ariana. All right, so I think it's an interesting background image, but the text isn't working for me. I think one is, as I said, I kind of tend to stay away from very obvious drop shadows like you have in there. If you're going to use them, blur them more. But yeah, something about the gray text with that background and that particular font, I don't know, it doesn't really feel like it's going together that well. I would say the same for the present and the titles thing. So overall, try a different font, lose the drop shadow, and probably the outline too. And then, it'll be interesting to see what we have after you do all that for all the text. Okay, this is Gabrielle. Okay. Yeah, I think that a lot of the text feels a little abrupt. I think it's okay how that comes in and fades out. Yeah, I think you really need to work on the timing of that film reel thing because it's meant to look like tumbleweed, and I'm not sure it would rotate backwards. I tend to think it would rotate, in this case counterclockwise, sort of along with the and the unfinished business feels like it leaves the screen a little bit abruptly, so you might want to make more room for that, give it some more time up there.